When her phone buzzed, Willow was lying on a mattress on the floor with Dusty for the naptime coercion. He was gaining on civility, but still resisted afternoon naps more fiercely than seemed possible for a 5-month-old. He would get so tired his head drooped on its stalk, but even with the afternoon bottle, he refused to drift off like a normal baby. He sucked at the formula with a furrowed brow until his lunch turned from liquid to squeaky air, then howled at life's injustices. Willa had tried offering a second bottle to follow the first. Everyone had tried something, rocking, strollering him around, even leaving him to cry it out as experts now recommended, but this kid could wail for hours. His grip on wakefulness must have been powered by a fear of loss. In his world, the minute you closed your eyes, a mother could vanish. It was Tig, with her uncanny patience, who discovered the cure was physical reassurance on a near superhuman scale. Thus, the afternoon ritual of lying with him for as long as it took, rubbing his tummy in circles and singing it till words and tune petered out into mindless, rhythmic, shushing sounds. Slowly the gaze would rise to the ceiling. The lids would blink and finally close. That was the exact moment Willa's phone woke up on the arm of the sofa. Silenced, luckily, but well out of reach. There she let it go. The call vibrated itself out and went still within 30 seconds. She lay within her, with her cheek on her forearms, admiring the baby's red and feather eyelashes and delicate nostrils and bottom lip tucked into the infant overbite. The melon of belly expanding, contracting. Nowadays, babies were always put to sleep on their backs. In face-down position, they would succumb to SIDS, if the pediatricians were to be believed. This back is best propaganda was news to Willa, whose kids were born in the decade when babies always had to be put to sleep on their tummies, lest they die of SIDS. The absolutism of these Cheshire Cat dogmas seemed funny, or maybe valiant. Probably nobody knew why little lives sometimes evaporated like smoke. But all guardians wanted to be given the amulet of prevention, and they didn't want maybe. Willa's phone went off again, and she watched it buzz like a big square beetle, itching itself and with each vibration toward a leap off the arm of the sofa. Even Dixie noticed it, from the position she'd recently secured at the foot of the mattress, and she watched Willa expectantly. Humans responded to such cues. The caller's persistence was piquing Willa's curiosity, but she stayed put. Dusty wouldn't have grown roots into the sleep yet, and she knew getting up would trigger the salvos. If she could help him sleep a while, they would be rewarded with an evening of reasonable temper, and no phone call was worth risking that. Besides, Willa was not the average phone owner who felt at every ring the tug of some potentially fantastic news. Some other phone, that would be. This mattress on the living room floor was now Willa and Iano's bedroom, wedged between the sofa and the non-functional fireplace. The sofa was their nightstand, the horrid paisley print she'd wanted to reupholster forever was now hidden under a drift of contact lens cases, books, uncorrected papers, and so there was one problem solved anyway. To a visitor's eye, their home might have the air of a disaster shelter, but Willa had no plans for entertaining. She'd made no new friends in Vineland, settling for electronic exchange with her many old ones, mostly to complain about Vineland. This living room was the normalization of their present shambles. They were cold all the time. For the first time since the kids were around 10 enjoyed the neatness of the dirt, and they were all using sleeping bags. From the camping gear, they'd also pulled out the old green propane stove to use in the kitchen after a ruptured gas line forced them to shut off the main. With Nick's oxygen in the house, they'd be crazy to take chances, said Mr. Petrofaccio, who had seen a thing or two in the arena of household explosions. Villa purchased a whopping electric space heater she set up on the ground floor, knowing it would sap their future via credit card payments and electric bills. But seeing no better option, it kept the house a few degrees above the jeopardy zone for plumbing and human life. Sometimes after dinner, the whole family went to the coffee shop on the corner to stoke up on warmth before the long night. When Willa dressed Dusty in his one-piece footed flannel pajamas, she seriously wished they made these in her size. To stench, the icy drafts blowing down the chimney, they'd stuffed the fireplace with garbage bags full of the leaves that fell from the 2 giant yard trees. Their only nice furniture was the antique walnut crib that had launched Willa and her Knox forebears. Now it stood beside the TV, but they seldom used it for naps due to the awkwardness of standing over Dusty to massage him to sleep. This mattress on the floor had become a family bed, an odd arrangement for their kind of people, but common enough worldwide. Willa knew, in countries with closer-knit families and meaner economies, she and Iano had dragged it downstairs at the first sign of snow through the cracks in their walls. Dixie had crept in guiltily to curl up close to their sleeping bags for warmth. Dixie, who never in her long life had been allowed on furniture, but who now had a palsy in her hind legs and other signs of being not long for this world. Next to arrive was Tig, who tried stuffing the breeches in her room with socks, but gave her the temperatures fell. She spent most nights at Jorge's, but sometimes ended up there with her bumpy little spine pressed against Willa and her thin arms woven around the baby. The first time Willa woke up in this fragrant jumble of dog, daughter, husband, baby, she lay in the dark feeling tears crawled down her cheekbones. She hadn't been this close to Tig since the 5th grade softball concussion put them on a week of night watch. Not everyone shared the family bed, of course. Nick had been moved home for the holidays in a Cadillac of a hospital bed, allegedly covered by Medicaid that plugged into the wall. Zeke was expected on Christmas Day but had absented himself to Boston for the month with the report that good money was starting to get somewhere. Willa was happy for Zeke on principle and stopped asking his intentions regarding Dusty. Unbelievably, her phone rang again. Curiosity now congealed into dread. She eased her weight off the mattress and crept across the carpet like a soldier under fire. Willa, I've been trying to reach you. Chris Hawk, not a death in the family. She lay on her back, letting her heartbeat slow to normal. I just got the baby to sleep, she whispered. Let me call you back. A novel thought struck her then. This could be good news. It happened. Wait, it's about Mary, right? This is her house. Please say yes. Silence. So there went that. Okay, she hissed. Your big emergency is to tell me I'm dead in the water. It's not that simple. Can you come over? I've got a baby and an old man here who both need tending, so no, it is not that simple. If it isn't yes, it's no. Or something else you didn't expect, just call me back, okay? It wasn't entirely true that she'd made no new friends. Christopher Hawk was dedicated to her cause, and Willa spent more time with him than with most members of her family. She still couldn't get him to laugh, but they'd exchanged some confidences and found common interest. He'd done a double master's in linguistics and history with a specialty in period slang. His thesis on Victorian obscenity made him a professional collector, and Willa took hypocritical pleasure in passing along some of Nick's most egregious curses. But Christopher was not a guy you had over for dinner. He had peculiar aversions, allergies galore, and according to himself, no life outside the historical society. Willa enjoyed the friendship partly because it made her own life seem normal. She waited another 5 minutes to be sure Dusty was securely down, then called him back from the kitchen, keeping her voice close to a whisper. In the odd way that conversational volume is contagious, so did Chris. Sorry, you don't have Mary's house. The news there is bad. Her house is gone. What do you mean gone? What's your source? Dixie had gotten up from the mattress and plodded into the kitchen to keep an eye on Willa. She lay down in the doorway, an audible drop of bones. I found a stash of envelopes with the address that were separated from Mary's correspondence, stuffed in a throwaway file. What moron did that? I can't say. I know, but I can't say. She's on my board of directors. She volunteers 1 day a week, and I spend the next 2 cleaning up after her. Chris, the facts, please. Okay, all these letters from Charles Valentine Riley are addressed to her house at 640 East Plum between 1870 and 1875. The numbering system has changed since then, but I cracked the code on that a long time ago. We have the old and new addresses of several public buildings, and we can extrapolate. It's mostly a matter of dropping every block number by 300, but in that section of town, it's only by 100. Now, Charles Riley, you remember who he is? The insect guy. Let's come back to Mary's house being gone. Willa looked out the kitchen window at a balmy day like no December she'd ever seen, and with her free hand moved dishes into the sink, harnessing her impatience. To converse with Chris was to wander in a maze of extraneous details. Maybe all historians were compulsive about the particulars, but Willa got the picture on why this one didn't have a lot of friends. The address puts Mary's house one door down from yours, on the corner lot. Oh, over there, so it's gone. Willa saw the story of her life, already written one house away from Hallelujah. It must have come down mid to late 20th century. Ironically, the stipulation house is still standing on the back of the lot, but they tore down the main house to make way for that reprehensible hovel with the vinyl siding. Right. Willa felt defensive on behalf of Jorge's family. It's not as if they tore down Mary Treat's house with their bare hands. She cast an envious eye at the little ivy-covered garage that had stood the test of time. Tig and Jorge had been cleaning it out for no reason Willa was allowed to know. And you rang my phone off the hook to tell me this bad news. Sorry, am I repeating myself? My dear, history is not good news or bad news. It's just one big story unreeling. There are no small parts, only small actors. And small paychecks. I get the part of Mary Treat's neighbor, thank you. Listen, a person of interest lived in your house. Oh yeah, tell me. He was a school teacher, hired as part of the original staff of Vineland High School. We have records of that. He would have been living in your house the year they opened the school and President Grant came to town. And you figured all this out how? From Mary Treat's correspondence, this guy comes up in her letters to Riley. She's listing his qualifications, maybe trying to help her neighbor find a new job. What are you saying, her letters? You told me you only have correspondence that people sent to her, the letters that were in her possession when she died. I told you I've been trying to track her letters down in every collection where I know they have to be. Asa Gray's papers at Harvard, Darwin's at the British Museum, the Smithsonian. These archivists keep emailing me back saying, Mary who? She's not a wife or mistress, so she falls through the cracks. Probably they see a woman's name on the letter and catalog it under personal, not colleague. Willa said nothing. Recalling Iano had made the same assumption, Dixie was starting to make a high-pitched whine they'd learned not to ignore. Her bladder no longer lasted beyond the edge of the yard, even that. Willa let her out the kitchen door, so I kept telling them to go back through the personal files and try to find her. I finally got a cooperation from the National Agricultural Library. They sent copies of almost 100 letters Mary wrote to Charles Valentine Riley. What? Willa nearly dropped a plate. When? They came Tuesday, but I only got into them this morning after I got rid of Madam Historical Lord. For 3 whole days, Chris had been sitting on a load of Mary Treat letters. He was territorial. Willa knew this and tried to give him some grace. He'd been the master of his dusty little universe over there for a long, long time before Willa showed up. She framed a courteous request. I would like very much to read those letters. That's why I've been trying to call you. Oh, so I wasn't really looking for him, but the school teacher neighbors keep popping up. I think Mary had an important relationship with this guy. Really? You mean relationship? Because that husband of hers was a narcissistic, cheating asshole. I keep hoping she had a boy toy tucked away somewhere. Chris made a huff of disapproval. Through the window, Willa watched Dixie pace through her routine. First, he circled the big oak, then walked across the beach and peed on its foot, then returned to the house, always the same as if some director had blocked this on her script. Sorry, you think I'm being prurient? She opened the door to let Dixie back in. I think you're letting your emotions influence your reading of history. My emotions are why we're here. I have a passionate attachment to the money I might get for saving my house. That's different. That's motivation. For us to do accurate research. Willa tried again for contrition. Please tell me more about the school teacher. Can we spin him as a Vineland hero? More of an anti-hero, actually. He was in the middle of a major controversy, and he might have gotten run out of town. Mary was definitely on his side. What kind of controversy? Over teaching evolution. He got in trouble with the principal, and then the town fathers. He was reprimanded. They put on this big debate in Plum Hall to try to shut him down, and from there it gets ugly. This thing was in letters to the editor for years. Wow. You mean like Scope's trial? But this would have been many decades earlier. She realized how tenacious, the minions of history clinging to their flat earth. Something like the Scope's trial, but more prurient. You're going to love this part, Willa. This town had an infamous murder. Looks like your guy was involved. What? I told you it was good. Holy cow. Good was not how it struck her at all. From her window, Willa had a perfect view between the two big trees, across the yard to the cluttered emptiness where Mary Treat had lived and left no trace. In a house that had taken no absolute dimensions for Willa, where spiders lived in jars, birds built nests in the eaves, and everything was put to the page at a desk in a cozy parlor. Not here, but over there. Now nowhere at all, Willa felt despair, not just for her own lost prospects. And Chris was insisting she should shift her loyalties to the controversial bit player. His house had stood for a century and a half, and that was something, apparently, while the ground shifted perilously under his feet. So my guy, the neighbor, does he have a name? A name out of a novel, Thatcher Greenwood. He was a giant snowman made of twinkling white lights and a chicken wire frame with garbage can lids for vest buttons, and an orange outfit, an orange traffic cone for nose. Here were plywood sleighs with reindeer, and low rider cars with reindeer tricked out in Christmas lights. A provocative display under a coexist banner had all the Disney princesses dancing with the wrong mates. Snow White in the arms of Aladdin, the Little Mermaid with the Beast. A tableau of mannequins showed Ralphie's friend from A Christmas Story licking the frozen flagpole. Nativity scenes abounded, some on the quirky side, but mostly earnest. This neighborhood was still called Little Italy, but now housed working-class families of many derivations, none of them eager to mess with the born-in-a-manger premise, and all on board with this over-the-top festival of Christmas decoration. Overhead, Willa noticed even the leafless maples and oaks were looped with strings of lights, suggesting some municipal investment in the way of bucket trucks. They'd come here at Jorge's suggestion on a weirdly balmy Christmas night. The week had been unseasonably warm, by no means normal according to longtime New Jerseyans, but any potential relief in Willa's household was damped by melting snow on their leaky roof and the impossibility of feeling Christmas spirit while wearing sunglasses. They'd had their Christchogina feast on the picnic table in the yard, but finished too early, leaving the family restless for some holiday-themed entertainment that was baby-friendly and free. Little Italy in lights wasn't an instant sell, even though Jorge insisted it was a very big deal in Vineland. He was meeting up with his boys over there as soon as it got dark because their ladies were adamant. Tig was agreeable. Zeke thought it sounded lame. Willa was on the fence. Nick and the baby were hostages to the collective will. Iano broke the tie as usual in favor of what the hell. And Jorge was right. All Vineland was there. The neighborhood's streets were blocked off and given over to herds of people who roamed the desk, hailing friends and pushing strollers from house to house, admiring the lit-up displays. It felt exotic to be out among hundreds of people walking after dark. Willa couldn't shake the feeling of having stepped into some other country. Jorge caught up to a group of friends that included both his sisters, pretty outgoing Sandra, the in-home care nurse, and shy Laura, who took care of other people's children at her house, along with her own. Tig first bumped herself into the crowd, much happier than with her own family. Willa noted with the habitual pang. 1,000 times she'd asked her mother after this wildling was born, could a mother and child just have her bad chemistry? She'd spent years putting careful love letters into Tig's psychic mailbox, when what the girl seemed to want in there was birdsong or a bucket of frogs. Highsborn, Iano said. What is that? Willa studied the word made of giant plywood letters, stapled with lights marching across the whole yard. I have no idea, Highsborn. Is it that football trophy? No, Morrow, that's Heisman. The mystery word was planned in a garden of illuminated snowmen, elves, wise men, and shepherds, and a super lifelike baby doll, Jesus on his bed of real hay. Despite the troublesome presence of elves and snowmen in the holy blended family, a placard announced this yard had taken the prize for best religious. This Christmas light palooza was a juried event. Already they've best seen, best humorous, and best creative. Iano moved on with Zeke, who was pushing Nick's wheelchair. The elder ignored the festivities, while father and son argued some obscure point about global trade. Willa paused no reposition Generation 4 in the baby sling. What are we going to do with this mess? She asked him, pulling her fingers through a head of curls beginning to run wild, as Tig's had at that age. Willa tried to settle his weight comfortably in the sling, without success. Zeke had argued against the stroller, staying saying 2 fancy chariots would make a bit much of a parade, but he hadn't offered to carry Dusty, who had officially outgrown this carrier. She ended up walking a little distance behind Tig and her friends, watching with a voyeur's lonely heart. Jorge's boys sported a lot of shaved heads and were wearing sleeveless t-shirts, which was pushing it, Willa felt. It wasn't that warm, but the young male engine ran on high octane. Intricate tattoos encircled their beautifully muscled upper arms. Jorge had an inked armband of barbed wire that had always struck Willa as self-punitive, but half obscured in darkness like this. Other markings resembled some secret ancient language. Cuneiform. The ladies wore tight jeans, gold bracelets, and impractical shoes. Willa felt a new soft spot for Jorge, who'd chosen her spiky little daughter despite the obvious group preference for wide bottoms and cascades of telenovela hair. If Jorge had paid some social price, he looked perfectly content now, walking with one arm pulling Tig close. They seemed to be settling the tiff that had kept Tig from sleeping over in recent days. Willa knew only the vague outlines. Jose Luis had skipped town and left Jorge holding the bag in some manner Tig thought was unfair. But Jorge refused to be mad at his brother. Willa had never seen a family like theirs, a big, loyal household of parentless siblings holding it all together. Suddenly, one of the guys turned on Tig and picked her up by the waist, alarming Willa, but this was a game. They began tossing Tig around like a kid sister, while the girls scolded and fluttered their painted nails, all of them laughing, Tig especially. In the end, she landed on Jorge's shoulders, and there she stayed, riding high as they all kept walking. That's weird. Zeke had caught up to Willa, just in time to disapprove of the spectacle of his sister. She waited to see if he would look at his son cuddled against her chest. He didn't. Your dad always used to carry Tig on his shoulders like that in crowds, so she could see more than just people's belt buckles, remember? I remember childhood, yes. I understood it was supposed to end. Of course. People like Willa and Zeke never stopped being surprised when it didn't. She remembered arguing with Iano in Tig's middle school years, calling it a halt to the piggybacks, insisting they not condescend because of her stature. Now Willa saw the severity of that judgment, adult or not. In a crowd like this, Tig would be seen nothing from the ground. Up on Jorge's shoulders, she looked ecstatic, the darling champion. Did you leave Nick next to the recycling bins? She asked. Zeke laughed. He probably thinks recycling is a communist plot. Willis smiled. He probably did. Dad's got him. They were having technical difficulties. Uh-oh, do we need to go? No, I don't think it was urgent. Only like 3 alarm curse words, not 5. My penis is flowers and bees around it, exactly. A woman with a small child in hand turned to give Willa a look. I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to say that in English. The mother moved away from them into a deep crowd that had gathered before a house was an aggressive glow. From this far back, Willa could see no details, only glare. The crowd flowed around them. You should go hang out with the cheerful young people. I'm sure Jorge's cute sisters will let you into the reindeer games. Zeke shrugged, not really wanting to be there. She could tell. You doing okay, honey? It's tough, the holiday scene. We haven't had much time to talk. There are some decisions about Dusty I wanted to talk over with you. Oh, I forgot to tell you. I brought the document from the court clerk. It's called a voluntary child custody agreement. Pretty straightforward. We just have to fill it out and sign in front of a notary. Oh, that's the route you want to go. I didn't mean to pressure you. No, you didn't. Okay, by decisions, Willa meant vaccination schedules, starting solid foods. Her head swam a little. Custody. You didn't seem to think much of the state of our household yesterday when you first got here. He'd been shocked to find his gypsy family encamped in the living room, and upset to find clothes and books he'd left upstairs badly water damaged. In a room now uninhabitable, Willa was mortified that she'd overlooked that battleground within the greater arena of their disaster. She'd let him lose a chunk of his life recorded in A-plus school papers, attendance certificates, and yearbook testimonials. Zeke had been tight-lipped for a few hours, but had come around, pointedly telling Willa it wasn't her fault. Now he shrugged. You guys will sort things out. It's not like you'll have to pass a home visit from the child welfare lady. Well, that's a relief, Willis said, trying for levity, feeling overwhelmed. At least you own a house, with a family, you're a home. Glad you think so. I'm saying I thought about this, Mom. I talked to a friend who handles this kind of stuff all the time in her practice. She said it's just paperwork one way or another, but this is a more robust document than medical power of attorney. It gives you flexibility. Willa had to wonder whether their particular situation was quite so run-of-the-mill, but he'd obviously spoken with a lawyer. Who else would call a document robust? We shouldn't move too fast, she said. Any therapist would advise against making huge decisions when you're recovering from a trauma. Willa was in no condition herself for a decision of this order, but Zeke didn't need her worries on top of his own. It's not a huge decision, it's just formalizing what we're already doing. You always be his father, that's permanent. Right, I want to do the right thing. When I get my act together, I will. I know, honey. You're my son who does the right thing, and you always will be. For now, I just want you to find some peace. Are you doing that? It's been okay. I'm going out, seeing people, and we're getting some really great contacts built with the business. Sorry, but I don't want to hear about the damn portfolios. I'm asking about your mental state. What are you doing to help yourself feel okay? What I do today to feel okay is to go to ground. That's just me, Mom. The damn portfolios make me feel like a better person. What does that even mean, going to ground? He thought about this. I guess hunker down on my home turf, find a place where I feel like a success. Sometimes that might mean moving backwards a little. I'm just trying to get back to where I was before everything bad happened. Before Helene, which meant before Dusty, from some storms no shelter was possible. Enough with the mom talk, she said. Go keep an eye on your sister. Make her introduce you to her pals. I'll wait for Dad and Nick to catch up. He hesitated a moment, then flashed the smile that had never failed to win people over to Team Zeke. He left her, and the crowd absorbed him. She wondered if going out and seeing people meant he was starting a whole rebooted life in Boston. He'd never been 6 months without a girlfriend. Willow wanted that for him again, of course, but not yet, surely. She watched him threading through the crowd, tracking Jorge's group with Tig as its visible masthead.